they said. "You'll carry our bags or walk home." So I walked. No screaming. No scene. I just set the bags down. 4 heavy ones, all full of overpriced souvenirs they couldn't be bothered to carry. And stepped away from the border crossing. Julia didn't even notice at first. She was too busy trying to get the perfect photo of her son beside the Bienvenue on Swiss sign. And Greg was already several steps ahead, barking at the customs officer in slow English like that would help. My hand was shaking from the weight. My lower back stiff. From hours in the car. My shoes weren't made for hills or stone paths, but that wasn't the issue. It was the heat, the kind that made your bones swell under your skin. And not once did they ask if I was managing. They just handed me more. "You're the only one not doing anything," Greg had said an hour before. "You could at least carry something. Irene, you've let worse slide." Told myself. You've forgiven worse. But this was new. This was the moment. Finally understood. They didn't think of me as someone to respect or include. I was just another pair of hands. An afterthought. A tired old woman with a wallet and a strong back. When I left the bags there, on the grass beside the trail, I didn't think. I didn't plan. I just started. Walking in the opposite direction toward a little sign that pointed to a village I didn't recognize. A blue arrow and a name I couldn't pronounce. It might have been a hiking path or a road for locals. I didn't care. I just wanted to walk until the buzzing in my ears stopped. Till I couldn't hear their voices anymore. I didn't look back. By the time Julia noticed I was gone, I was already halfway down a shaded slope lined with fir trees. I didn't have my passport. My phone was still in my pocket, but I turned it off. The silence felt like oxygen. Path led to a quiet road where a small bus with faded lettering was idling. Asked the driver in broken French if it went to the nearest town. He nodded. That was all I needed. €2. That's what it cost to leave them behind. The town, I would later learn it was called St. Lucie Duis. Looked like a postcard from another life. Stone buildings with ivy, a bakery with windows fogged by steam, a fountain in the center of a square where 2 children were tossing pebbles and laughing. No English signs, no selfie. I found a small inn with a sign that read Chambresponables, and rang the bell. A woman with kind eyes and silver hair opened the door. She looked at me, just looked, and said, "Vous avez wanda calma, madame." I nodded. And for the first time in years, my eyes welled with tears that weren't caused by someone else's cruelty, but by relief. Yes, I needed calm. I needed stillness. I needed to stop being someone's baggage handler. Her name was Marianne. She didn't ask for ID. I told her I had no reservation. Prav, she said, not important. She gave me a room on the 2nd floor with a view of the hills, clean sheets, no television, a little kettle. Paid in the emergency money I kept in my bra folded in a tissue. Old habits. Lay down on the bed in my travel clothes without even removing my shoes. The silence pressed in, not like a wait, but like a bomb. I could hear nothing but birds and the slow, steady breath of the wind. My limbs ached, but it didn't matter. Don't know how long I slept. When I woke, the light had shifted. I sat up, slowly, unsure for a moment where I was. Then I remembered I had walked away. I had finally walked away. I rinsed my face in the little sink and looked at myself in the mirror above it. My reflection startled me. Not because I looked old. I'd looked old for a while. No, because I looked calm. Like someone who had done something brave and survived it. There were 5 missed calls on my phone, all from Julia. No messages. She wouldn't leave one. Not unless she was sure she could control the narrative. She probably thought I was lost or confused or fainted somewhere on a trail. Let her wonder. Let them all wonder. I turned the phone off again and set it face down on the nightstand. Tomorrow I would find a train station. I would buy a ticket and I would go. Somewhere else, anywhere but back. Not because I wanted to punish them, but because I was done carrying what wasn't mine. It started with a promise. We want you to be part of this, Mom. Julia said over the phone 2 months before the trip. You've never seen Europe. We want to do it together as a family. I should have known better. Julia always knew how to phrase things. To sound generous, like a gift instead of a setup. Still I said yes. I wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, this would be different. I even bought a new suitcase. Not the big one, but the medium size with wheels that actually work. I didn't want to be a burden. I never do. Pack sensibly. Wrinkle-free blouses, a scarf or 2 sturdy shoes. I left my old dresses behind, even the blue one I like best. Julia said, "You won't need anything fancy. It's just family." I took that to heart. Silly me. The morning of the flight, the house felt too quiet. I stood at the window holding a cup of tea, watching the sun creep across my neighbor's yard. I remember thinking maybe this will be the trip that stitches us back together. That's what I hoped for. Not fun, not sightseeing. Just a little closeness. Something I hadn't felt in years. Greg honked from the driveway, even though he'd promised to come to the door. When I got into the car, he didn't say hello. He was on the phone laughing too loudly. Probably with one of his golf buddies. Julia gave me a quick, "Hi, Mom," without turning around. Tyler had his headphones in. That was the welcome. At the airport, I paid for the extra bag. Julia said their tickets didn't cover checked luggage, and mine did, so I offered. Felt easier. That's what being a mother is, isn't it? Making things easier. I told myself not to keep count, not to start a list in my head. That's dangerous. We flew into Paris. Greg insisted on renting the biggest car they had. Something called a luxury crossover that still barely fit 4 of us and the luggage. I was told to sit in the back behind the driver. "You'll have more leg room," Julia said. What she meant was, "We don't want to talk to you." Still I smiled. I took photos out the window. I tried to comment on the countryside. No one answered. Tyler had a game on his phone. Greg was focused on the GPS. Julia was scrolling through her messages, fingers moving like they were in a race. I held my tongue when we stopped at a gas station, and they all went inside, leaving me to sit in the car. Held it again when they came back with snacks for themselves, but nothing for me, not even water. I told myself they were tired. Jet lag makes people thoughtless. At the hotel in Rains, I offered to take the pull-out sofa. "You're the smallest," Greg said. He nodded. I didn't mention my hip or the fact that I hadn't slept on anything but a proper bed in years. I didn't want to be difficult. That first night while they went to a wine tasting, I stayed behind, curled up under a scratchy hotel blanket with a bag of almonds and the hum of the TV in a language I couldn't understand. Julia texted me a photo, the 3 of them smiling with glasses of champagne. "Wish you were here," she wrote. I almost laughed, but I kept showing up. I was there the next morning when we toured the cathedral. I waited in the heat while Greg argued with a tour guide about Americanized coffee. I stood patiently while Julia took 50 photos of Tyler pretending to lean against medieval stone. When I asked if she could take one of me, she said, "Maybe. Later. We're kind of in a rush." At lunch, I offered to pay again. Greg joked that I must be hoarding a secret fortune. I didn't answer. He wouldn't have understood the savings it took for me to say yes to this trip. How many winter coats I'd patched instead of replacing. How many dinners I'd skipped when groceries ran high. That night in the room, I overheard Julia whispering to Greg in the bathroom. I wasn't meant to hear it. It's so slow. It's like dragging a turtle across Europe. Greg laughed. I didn't know the walls were thin. I didn't cry. Not then. But something in me shrank. Still, I told myself it was early, that maybe they were tired, that things would improve. But a part of me, the quiet, stubborn part that's carried me through 7 decades, began making a different list. Not the one that counted favors, not the one that forgave slights. A list of truths. And I wrote the first one silently in my head that night. They don't see me. By the 4th day, I had stopped trying to be in the photos. It wasn't a decision exactly, more like a quiet acceptance. Every time we passed something worth remembering, a vineyard, a bridge, a mural on a cafe wall, Julia or Tyler would pose, adjust their angles, take 20 versions, then they'd move on. I was usually still catching up, slightly breathless, always just a few steps too slow to be noticed. In one city, forget the name, they were all blurring together. We stopped at a market square. Greg wanted sausages. Julia wanted local soap for her coworkers. Tyler just wanted Wi-Fi. Stood near a vendor selling hand-painted ceramics, plates, and little espresso cups with shaky blue patterns, not perfect but made with care. I lingered, ran my fingers over a small plate with tulips on the rim. It reminded me of a dish I'd once bought when I was young and broke and newly married. George and I had used it for years until it cracked down the middle. "Don't get that," Julia said, coming up behind me. "It won't match your kitchen." I hadn't asked her opinion. I hadn't said a word. Bought anyway. Wrapped it gently. Paid with my own money. Didn't tell. That plate now sits in my new kitchen. Just one plate, but it's mine. There was a moment in Strawberg that I thought I might leave. Then it was raining. Not hard, but enough to chill your scalp. We'd just come out of a museum, the kind I'd enjoyed, and they had rushed through. I wanted to sit. My knees were burning. There was a bench near a pastry shop, and I asked if we could pause for a moment. Greg rolled his eyes. We just sat for lunch. Tyler said nothing. Just pulled his hoodie. Later, Julia gave me a look that could cut glass. "If you're tired, maybe you should go back to the hotel. We'll explore a bit longer." They were already walking away before I could answer. I sat on that bench and watched them vanish into the crowd like people I used to know. The pastry shop had a small table outside under an awning. I bought a single warm roll and a coffee and ate it alone, watching strangers walk past. That was the first time I turned my phone off during the day. I liked the silence. At the hotel that night, Greg complained that I hadn't brought the power adapter back up to the room. "You were the last to use it," he said. Wasn't. I knew I wasn't, but I said nothing. Later I found it in his bag. Did I tell him? Well, some things are louder in silence. One morning in Lucerne, Tyler tripped slightly on a loose cobblestone and cursed. "Oh my God, these streets are prehistoric," he muttered. I reached out. Without thinking, just instinct, to steady him. He shrugged me off like I was a stranger, a beggar on the corner. "Don't," he said, not crewy, just flat. Like it was embarrassing to be touched by me. He's 17. Maybe it's normal, but Something inside me knotted tight. Later at dinner, he posted a photo of his meal. With the caption, "Best trip ever, just us three." Just us three. I saw it because he forgot I still followed him. That night, I sat in the hotel bathroom with a shower running. Not because I needed it, but because I didn't want them to hear me breathing hard, not crying, not quite. Just trying. To stay quiet, to not become a spectacle. I remembered something my own mother said to me when I was young and angry and thought she was too slow, too out of touch, too inconvenient. "You'll miss me when I'm not in the room anymore." At the time I rolled my eyes. I understood they wouldn't miss me, but they would feel the absence. 'Cause I would make it permanent. By the end of the week, I stopped waiting for them. I ate when I was hungry. Rested when I needed to. I stopped asking what the day's plans were. And when they asked why I didn't seem enthusiastic, I just smiled. "I'm just along for the ride," I said. Let them believe it. I wasn't along for the ride. I was counting the exits. We had dinner in Geneva the night before the border. A place Greg had read about. Some restaurant with stars and reviews and a name none of us could pronounce correctly. He insisted we go. Once. "In a lifetime kind of place," he said. "We'll regret it if we don't." By we, of course, he meant himself. It was the kind of restaurant where the menus didn't have prices and the waiters looked you up and down before seating you. Julia wore her cream blouse, the one she never packs unless she expects photos. Tyler slicked his hair back. With too much gel. Greg held the wine list like it was a weapon he knew how to use. I wore a simple navy cardigan and the same black flats I'd worn since Paris. I hadn't packed anything fancier. Julia had told me not to at the table. No one offered me the best seat. I took the one closest to the kitchen, half out of the conversation and all the way out of the view. Greg ordered for everyone. "Mom likes white," Julia said absently when the sommelier asked. "Something soft. Not too dry." "I do like white wine, but that night I wanted red." I didn't speak. The waiter came with the first course, something with foam and truffles. Barely touched it. The food was beautiful, but my stomach felt heavy. Tyler was already halfway through his before I'd taken a second bite. "Are you not hungry?" Julia asked. "I'm fine. You've barely eaten this whole trip." Greg added. "If you collapse, we won't be able to carry you back." He laughed. No one else did. He wasn't joking. After the main course they asked the waiter, "Take a photo." Tyler held up his phone and waved him over. "Excuse me. Can you take one of us?" He said, gesturing to himself, Julia, and Greg. They posed, arms around each other, smiling wide, wine glasses raised. I was still sitting at the table, napkin folded in my lap, hands resting quietly. No one said, "Wait, get one of all four." No one even glanced at me. The waiter hesitated, looking unsure, but took the photo as requested. I smiled to myself. Something sharp settled into my chest. When the check came, Greg made a show of patting his pockets. "Damn," he said. "I left my wallet back at the hotel." Tyler looked up confused. "Didn't you?" Julia cut in quickly. "Mom, could you cover this? We'll Venmo you when we get back." There it was. The familiar line, the slow reach into my purse, the silent agreement that I would take care of it. I always did. I looked at the bill. 321 francs. I handed over my card. They didn't even thank me. After dinner, they walked ahead laughing about something Tyler had said. Followed a few steps behind. We passed a bookstore with postcards in the window. I stopped for just a moment. None of them noticed. Bought one. card with a simple watercolor of a mountain. On the back, when I returned to the hotel, I wrote, "You won't remember this night, but I will." I didn't sign it, didn't mail it, just tucked it into my bag between the pages of my travel journal. A journal no one asked to see. Later in the room, Julia looked up from her phone. "Don't forget to pack light for tomorrow," she said. "We're crossing the border. Lots of walking." He nodded. "Maybe don't bring your shoulder bag," Greg added. "It slows you down." Nodded again. I was always nodding, but inside I was already planning. I looked at my reflection in the bathroom mirror that night and whispered out loud as if it would help it sink in. "This is the last time I'll pay for my own humiliation." I turned out the light and closed the door behind me. They didn't say goodnight and I didn't say goodbye. The next morning we left Geneva just after 9. The air was already heavy with heat, the kind that clings to your neck before the day even starts. Tyler complained before we were out of the city. "Why can't we take the train? The car is too cramped." Greg snapped that renting the car was cheaper, more flexible. Julia reminded them both that we were almost at the border and to please, for God's sake, stop bickering. I stayed silent in the back seat. It had become background noise by then, a cough in the corner of a room present but only barely. I watched the scenery change from storefronts to farmland to forest. The signs began to alternate between French and German. It all felt very symbolic. We were passing from one country to another and I was still a tourist in my own family. At the last rest stop before the border, Julia insisted we all get out and stretch. The parking lot was gravel. Stepped out carefully, knees tight from the ride. "Grab my water bottle, Mom," she called, already walking ahead. Greg added, "And Tyler's bag. He's on his phone again." They were halfway to the bathrooms before I'd even shut the car door. I looked at the mess in the trunk. Bags, snacks, half-zipped suitcases, a broken umbrella. Could have said no. I could have let them handle their own things. But I didn't. I hoisted the tote bag over one shoulder, the backpack on the other. One of them, I still don't know whose, had a souvenir snow globe that jabbed me in the ribs. I shuffled toward the bathroom area, past rows of other travelers, some with small children, some helping elderly parents. I watched a young man link arms with his grandmother as they walked. He smiled down at her. She beamed. No one ever beamed at me. When we got back in the car, Greg complained again. "Like, we've got 10 bags for 3 people." 4. Corrected softly. He didn't hear me, or he pretended not to. The border crossing was small, more of a checkpoint than a rail gate. Switzerland doesn't fuss much, but there were still customs agents standing under a canopy, waving cars through at a crawl. Julia insisted we pull over and walk for a bit while Greg handled the papers. "It'll be a cute photo op," she said. "We're officially entering Switzerland." Tyler groaned but followed her out of the car. I followed too, carrying 2 of the bags they didn't want to leave unattended. They walked ahead, laughing, pointing at the signs. I struggled to keep pace, sweat clinging to the back of my shirt. My sandals caught on the uneven path. I could feel my right heel blistering. No one looked back. That's when I heard it. Greg's voice, half laughing, tossing the words over his shoulder like a joke that didn't need to land. "If she can't keep up, she can carry our bags or walk home." Julia didn't respond, but she didn't defend me either. Tyler chuckled. I stopped walking. Not out of drama, not out of bite, just enough. I looked down at the bags in my hands. One was Julia's with her initials stitched into the side. The other was Tyler's, heavy with tech gear and chargers and God knows what else. I didn't say a word. I stepped to the side of the trail, set them down gently, adjusted the straps so they wouldn't fall, smoothed the handles. I stood there for a moment watching them fade into the path ahead. They didn't turn around, not once. Turned the other way. There was a sign, blue and simple, with an arrow pointing down. A narrow road. St. Lucie Duis. 3 kilometers. That was all I needed. Walk. My feet. My arms ached. My heart thudded with something between shame and release. But I didn't stop. Not until the bags were so far behind me that they felt like part of another life. I didn't leave a note. I didn't owe them that. Let them figure it out. Let them feel just once what it's like to be forgotten on the side of the road. I walked until the bags, the voices, the sound of Greg's joke, "She can carry the bags or walk home," all dissolved into the air behind me. The road bent slightly downhill. My calves burned. The sun was now fully overhead, sharp and unsympathetic. There was no shade, no bench, no one to say, "Are you all right?" And for once I didn't want that. I wasn't all right. But I wasn't broken either. Somewhere in my bones, I knew this wasn't the moment I cracked. It was the moment I stopped pretending it didn't hurt. Had no plan. I only knew I couldn't go back to the car. I couldn't stand there while Julia looked at me like I was the problem, while Greg made another joke, while Tyler rolled his eyes. I wouldn't survive that. Not just the embarrassment, the eraser. 'Cause that's what it was really. I hadn't been humiliated. I'd been erased slowly, quietly, efficiently. They didn't argue with me because they didn't think I was worth arguing with. They didn't thank me because they didn't think I was doing anything special. They didn't ask what I needed because they'd stopped believing. Had needs. I was the luggage. They'd said it out loud. I just didn't realize I'd heard them. The village road narrowed. Trees arched overhead now, softening the heat. Little sign appeared, hand painted, tilted slightly with an arrow and the word chamber. Rooms. That's all I needed. It led to a small inn with white shutters and flower boxes. A modest place, neat and quiet. Rang the bell. The woman who answered wore a linen apron and had thick silver hair pulled back in a bun. Her face was lined but warm. "Bonjour," she said. Cleared my throat. "Do you speak any English?" "A little," she said, smiling. "I need a room," I said. "Just for one person, just for a few days." She looked at me, really looked, and nodded. "Of course you are tired," she said gently. "I can see." She led me upstairs to a room with pale blue curtains, a wooden bed, a view of green hills. It wasn't luxury, but it was clean, calm, and mercifully empty of people who wanted something from me. I slept for 5 hours, shoes on, purse still strapped across my chest. When I woke, it was nearly sunset. My head ached, but not from sorrow. From too much noise too long endured. I sat up slowly and took stock of my things. Phone off. Passport zipped into the side of my purse. Wallet intact. I hadn't told anyone I was leaving. Hadn't said goodbye. I didn't need to. When someone tells you in front of your child, no less, that your place is to carry their bags or disappear, they've already written your ending. All you have to do is step into it. But I would be the one to write what comes after. At the front desk, I paid for 3 nights. In cash. I gave a name that wasn't mine. Ruth Caldwell. My middle name and my mother's maiden name. just in case Julia thought to call the consulate. There was a computer in the lobby for guests. I used it to check train schedules. There was a direct line from a nearby town to Geneva Airport, then a flight home rerouted through Frankfurt, leaving in 2 days. I booked it, used my own card, booked the window seat. Didn't cry. Not when I saw the confirmation email. Not when I called the bank to make sure I could use my account abroad. Not even when I opened my suitcase and realized I'd left half my clothes in Greg's rental car. Let them keep the sweaters. Let them pack them in silence, wondering if I died somewhere between one border and the next. Maybe in a way I had, but not the kind of death they'd assume. Not frailty, not confusion, just clarity. That night I sat in the tiny dining room of the inn and ordered a simple meal. Roasted potatoes, fish, white wine. The owner's cat rubbed against my ankle. Outside, the hills turned golden. The last light. And I thought, this isn't escape. It's arrival. I had arrived in a life where I didn't have to smile at people who treated me like a chair they forgot they were sitting on. I had arrived in a place where silence wasn't punishment. It was. They said I could walk home, so I did. Just not the way they meant. The next morning, I woke to bird song and the creak of old wood under my feet. Not the sound of Greg's impatient footsteps or Julia's voice raised in frustration. I opened the window and let in the early light. Cool air brushed my face. Somewhere in the distance, a bell rang. Church or school, I didn't know, but it made me feel like I was somewhere people lived simple lives. Quiet, respectful lives. I made tea using the small kettle in the room. No one rushed me. No one rolled their eyes because I took my time adding honey. I drank it by the window, barefoot, watching the hills come alive with sunlight. It was the first time in over a week, maybe longer, that I wasn't bracing for someone to need something from me. At breakfast downstairs, the innkeeper, Marianne, asked if I had slept. Well, I said, yes. You stay long? She asked, her English hesitant but clear. Just until tomorrow, I said. Then I go home. She nodded, then hesitated. Trouble? Thought for a moment. Then I shook my head. No, not trouble. Just too much noise. Marianne smiled gently as if she understood more than I'd said. Quiet is good for the bones. She poured me more coffee and walked away. I took a walk that morning through streets with no names I could read. I passed gardens full of tomatoes and lavender, stone walls, wooden signs, bicycles leaning against fences. No one stared. No one offered me advice. Little girl waved to me from behind a gate. I waved back. That was it. Felt like healing. Not the kind where someone comforts you. The kind where no one disturbs you. Where your soul gets to uncoil like a rope left in the sun too long. At noon, I sat in the shaded courtyard with my notebook. I hadn't written in years, but I found myself scribbling anyway. Small things. What I saw, what I heard, what I refused to carry anymore. Then I turned my phone. 17 missed calls, most from Julia, a few from Greg, one from a U.S. consulate number. No voicemails, just call after call like a series of knocks. I didn't think they had to explain. There was one text from Tyler. Grandma, where are you? Mom's freaking out. I stared at it for a while. Then I deleted it. Called my bank. A woman named Rebecca answered, kind voice. Southern lit. Told her I wanted to check recent transactions and ensure there were no holds on international purchases. Asked me to confirm security questions. I did. Then before I hung up I paused. One more thing, I said. How do I change the secondary access on my accounts? Mean revoke someone's access. Yes, of course, ma'am. That can be done. Immediately. Would you like me to remove Julia Mitchell? Yes, I said. My voice didn't shake. My hands didn't tremble. It was like trimming a dead branch off a tree. Necessary. I also called the airline, paid a change fee and graded my seat. Window, bulkhead, early boarding. They offered me a meal. Selection. I chose chicken, no wine. I would get enough silence in the sky. Didn't need to be sleepy. That afternoon I asked Marianne if there was a place nearby to print something. She pointed me to a bakery 2 blocks away that had a public printer in the back. I thanked her and walked slowly down the road, stopping to smell the wild roses tangled along a fence. At the bakery I typed up a letter. Short, direct, not a confession, not an apology, just a line of truth, printed on white paper and folded twice. Left in my purse. I wouldn't send it to them. It wasn't for them. It was for me. Proof that I had finally said it, even if only on paper. Later I watched the sun go down from the back garden of the inn. The breeze smelled of mint and chimney smoke. A blackbird landed on the railing, stared at me, then flew off. And I thought, I've got one more night to be no one to anyone. One more night to be just a woman in a room with a window and a bed. Tomorrow I go home, but not to the same house, not to the same life. They wanted me to walk home. I did. And on the way I found myself. The next morning I woke up before the sun. Not because of an alarm. I hadn't one. My body simply stirred, as if it knew the day held something important. I sat in the stillness of that small room, wrapped in the blanket from the bed, my feet tucked under me. The hills outside were still blue with shadow, no birds yet, no footsteps, just the sound of my breath and the distant hum of something waking. Maybe a town, maybe me. I reached for my notebook again, not to write, just to hold it. Sometimes a blank page is its own kind of comfort. Proof that something new can still begin. I thought about my life not as a story, not as something to explain or make sense of, just the shape of it. Thought about George. He was a good man, not perfect, but good in the way that counts. Solid kind. He used to say I was the strong one. I never believed him. I thought strong meant loud, certain, decisive. Now I think maybe strong just means staying. Staying when it's easier to run. Staying in a marriage when money's tight and patience is tighter. Staying by your child's side through every bad haircut, every slammed door, every betrayal you swallow for the sake of peace. But staying isn't the same as shrinking. And somewhere along the way I forgot the difference. Julia wasn't always this way. When she was little, she used to bring me daisies from the neighbor's yard and tell me I was the most beautiful mom in the world. She used to cry when I left for work, even if it was only for a few hours. Used to climb into bed with me after nightmares and wrap her little arms around my neck like she never wanted to. Go. I don't know when that changed. Maybe when I couldn't afford the brand name clothes. Maybe when I said no to paying for her second wedding. Maybe when I stopped agreeing with her just to keep the mood light. Greg came into her life already, convinced she wasn't enough. And somehow she started believing it. And she passed that feeling on like a cold, invisible, and contagious. I kept thinking love would be louder than pride. But I forgot that pride doesn't listen, only speaks. I don't hate them. That's the truth of. I wish I could say I do. It would make this easier. But it's worse than it. It's grief because I still love them. Still remember who they used to be, who we used to be. But I've finally accepted they don't love me the way I need to be loved. They love me when I'm useful, when I'm quiet, when I say yes. Without hesitation and smile through the bruises on my dignity. That isn't love. That's performance. And I am retiring from the role. Breakfast, Marianne brought me a small plate of apricot preserves and warm bread. Today is travel, she asked. Yes, back to the airport. She hesitated. You okay? Smiled. Not too brightly, just enough. Yes, I said. I think I finally am. She didn't press. She just nodded like women who've lived long enough to recognize a private battle won. After breakfast I packed. It didn't take long. I had only half the things I had brought and none of the weight. I left behind a small scarf on the chair, folded neatly, a parting gift for the room that had given me peace. The front desk I paid again, even though the room was already covered. Keep it, I said, for something beautiful. Marianne didn't argue. She just pressed my hand and whispered, Bon voyage. The taxi was already waiting at the corner. Got in. The driver asked if I needed help with my bag. I said, no, thank you. It was the lightest thing I'd carried in years. As we pulled away, I looked back at just once. I didn't wave. Some endings don't need ceremony, just a full back at the border. They didn't notice I was gone until the customs officer waved them forward and asked for all passengers to be present. Julia turned around to call me and saw only the bags sitting upright, untouched right where I had left them. For a moment she probably thought I was nearby. Maybe in the bathroom, maybe lagging behind. Then the moment stretched too long. Greg or Tyler took out his phone. Julia's voice rose, first in confusion, then sharp, with that tight panic people feel when they realize they've made a mistake, but can't figure out which one. They didn't understand yet. Not then. They still believed I was just a few steps behind. Still believed I was doing what I always did, absorbing the discomfort, adjusting my pace, trying to keep up. But this time I hadn't. This time I had let them walk ahead. And I had walked away. While they backtracked, asked strangers, checked the rest stop, called local authorities, I was already at the airport. I didn't rush. Had a small meal, bought a book at the little kiosk, a crime novel, the kind George used to read. Sat near the window and watched planes arrive and leave. My flight was boarding in 2 hours, and their panic was just beginning. Julia called 17 times in the span of an hour. Then came Greg, then Tyler. None of them left a message. I pictured them standing in a group, faces drawn, talking over each other. Maybe she got lost. She's not answering. Try her again. At 3:15 p.m. I got an email from Julia. Mom, where are you? This isn't funny. We've called the police. Please respond. We're worried. I didn't answer. At 3:47 p.m., another. We've contacted the consulate. If something happened to you, we need to know. Please, we're scared. Phila didn't reply because I knew what this was. It wasn't about me. Not really. Was about the narrative, about control, about keeping the performance going. The mother who funds the trip, who waits in the background, who smiles quietly and carries the bags. Not the woman who walks away. That wasn't in their script. By the time I boarded, the sun had begun to set. The airport windows turned gold. The terminal lights blinked on one by one. I settled into my seat. Bulkhead. Window. Early boarding. No one asked me to move. No one expected me to give anything up. I pulled the blanket over my lap, closed my eyes, and let the hum of the engines drown out the buzz of my phone in my purse. Let them call. Let them wonder. I wasn't lost. I was done being found by people who never really saw me. When the flight landed in Frankfurt for my connection, I turned the phone back on briefly. There were more messages. One from a U.S. embassy staffer, formal and polite. One from Greg. What the hell is going on? Olas. Two from Tyler, shorter, more clip. Then one from Julia. Please just let me know you're safe. I read that one twice. It was the only one that sounded like her. The her I remembered. Before Greg. Before the coldness crept in. Before she learned to be disappointed in me. I almost responded. Then I didn't. Some silences are earned. I boarded the connecting flight. One smaller, quieter. A red eye to the U.S. As we ascended, I pressed my forehead to the window. Below, Europe fell away in a patchwork of lights in shadow, and I thought, let them search. Let them feel the absence. Let them sit in the empty space I used to fill and ask themselves why it's there. Back in the States, I didn't go straight home. I didn't tell anyone I was coming back early. Didn't call the house sitter. Didn't check the mailbox. Didn't even stop at the market where everyone knows me by name. I took a taxi from the airport to a lakeside in 2 towns over. Somewhere quiet, unfamiliar. A place with no expectations. I paid cash again, asked for 2 nights. The woman behind the counter was younger than me, late 50s maybe, but her eyes had the same tired kindness I'd seen in Marianne's back in Switzerland. We're traveling alone? She asked. Yes. Business or pleasure? Smiled. Faintly. Closure. She didn't ask anything else. The room had a view of the water, a small balcony, no television, no phone, just a soft bed, a wooden chair, and a kettle with packets of tea. It was perfect. Took walks by the lake that first day, watched ducks waddle across the grass, sat on a bench, and listened to the wind rustle through the reeds. No one called my name. No one asked me to carry anything. I wasn't anyone's mother here. And I did better than I had in years. The next morning I checked out, backpack on my shoulder, passport zipped tight in the front pocket. I left a note for Robert at the desk. Not a letter, just a line. Scribbled on a hotel notepad. You were right. The silence here is good. For the bones. Thank you. I didn't leave a number. Didn't ask for anything in return. I didn't need to. Some kindnesses exist only in the moment they're given. Like light through a window at just the right hour. Took taxi home. The driver tried to make small talk. Let him. We passed the familiar streets. My grocery store, the library, the diner with a terrible coffee but good pie. Everything looked the same, but I wasn't. As we turned onto my street, I felt the old ache. The one that came every time I saw the porch, the garden I used to tend. The front door where no one had knocked in weeks. But I didn't let it win. Because I wasn't going to stay. Not in that house. Not in that life. They'd asked me to walk home. I had. And now I was going to leave it behind. For good. The house was just as I'd left it. Front porch clean, mail neatly stacked. The potted fern I'd forgotten to water still. Green somehow. The house sitter must have done her job. I'd hired her for 2 weeks. And I was back in 8 days. I walked through the front door with my own key. Quiet. No one there to greet me. No notes on the counter. Just the echo of my own steps on tile. I dropped my backpack by the chair in the hallway. Took one deep breath. Then I started. Didn't sit down. Didn't unpack. I went straight to the drawer in the sideboard, where I kept the documents. The ones I'd always been too tired, too polite, or too hopeful to change. I took them all. The will, the power of attorney, the deed to the house with Julia's name. Co-signed from 3 years ago when she convinced me it was just easier this way. It hadn't been easier. It had made me smaller. Every piece of paper chipped away at my independence. Called my lawyer. He answered with a familiar warmth. We'd known each other since George passed. Mrs. Mitchell, he said. Is everything all right? I need to amend my will, I said. And revoke some permissions. Of course, he said. Are you sure you want to? I'm sure. There was a pause. I could hear him switching into the voice lawyers use when they know something deep has shifted. All right, let's start. Didn't take long. The will rewritten to divide my estate among 3 nieces I hadn't seen in years but who still sent Christmas cards, still called on my birthday, still treated me like a person. The house I would sell my half. Julia could buy me out if she wanted. If not, the sale would be forced. I'd already found a realtor. The account sole control. Julia's name removed. Power of attorney revoked. Took 3 phone calls to sign forms and 1 notary. No drama, just paperwork. Funny how something so invisible for so long could be undone so quickly. I packed over the next 2 days. Kept only what I loved. The plate I bought in the market, my mother's earrings, 2 good coats, a few books, a box of old letters. I donated the rest. Julia's things, the vase she gave me 5 Christmases ago, the blanket she left after one of her rare sleepovers, the souvenir magnet from her honeymoon with Greg. I wrapped them carefully and mailed them to her house with no note. Let her receive them in silence. Let her decide what they mean now. Found a small apartment on the other side of town. 1 bedroom, top floor, a view of the hills. Enough sunlight to warm the kitchen table. I signed the lease in person. The agent, a kind woman with a no-nonsense haircut, handed me the keys. With a smile. You moving out of a big place? Big enough, I said. Downsizing. No, I said, pausing just a moment. Right sizing. She laughed, not unkindly. I like that, she said. So did I. That night, in the near-empty house, I ate dinner on a paper plate. A sandwich, a cup of tea, a square of chocolate. I sat at the kitchen table where Julia had once told me, "You should be grateful we're including you." I stared at the spot on the floor where Greg had spilled wine and laughed when I offered to clean it. And I let it all pass through me, not like a storm but like a wind that no longer mattered. Then I walked through each room once more slowly with intention not to say goodbye, to reclaim it because it was mine once. And now it was done. Dear Tyler, you won't read this. I won't send it. Not because I'm afraid of your response. I doubt you'd bother, but because this letter isn't for your inbox, it's for me. I need to write it. So I don't carry it anymore. You used to call me Grandma with 2 M's and 1 big hug. You used to fall asleep on my lap watching cartoons, drooling on my shirt, and I let you even when it faint. I used to save every scribble you gave me. Dragons with 3 heads. Spaceships with windows. Hearts with jagged edges. You don't remember that. But I do. I remember everything. I remember the last time you reached for my hand in a parking lot without being told. I remember the first time you ignored me. In a room full of people like I was furniture. Invisible and expected. I remember when your eyes stopped lighting up when I walked into a room. You didn't get cruel all at once. Came slowly, quietly. The way winter seeps in through old windows. Barely noticed at first, but it was there. In the way you sighed when I asked for help. Unlocking my phone. In the way you mocked my ringtone under your breath. In the way you never once, not once offered to carry a bag that wasn't yours. You're 17. That's old enough to know better. It's not about forgetting to say thank you. It's about not seeing a person as someone who deserves one. That day at the border you laughed. You laughed when Greg said I could carry the bags or walk home. I don't think you understood what you were laughing at. I don't think you realized what it meant to join in, because when you laughed you didn't just echo someone else's cruelty. You confirmed it. You turned it into fact. You made it real. Here's what I want you to know, Tyler. I am not fragile because I am old. I am not your servant because I am quiet. And I am not your audience just because you have Wi-Fi and sharper elbows. I had a life. Before your mother was born, before you were even a thought. I had dreams and disappointments, laughter and grief. I have scars you'll never see and stories you'll never ask to hear. I walked away not because I was weak, but because you all assumed I never would. Your mother thinks she lost me. She didn't. She gave me away in pieces over years. One request, one joke, one dismissal at time. And I finally stopped receiving myself back. I don't hate you. We're still a boy. A boy raised in a house where men get loud and women get tired. A boy who doesn't know yet that silence from the people who love you isn't always safety. Sometimes it's surrender. And sometimes it's the warning before a door shuts for good. Maybe someday you'll grow up and remember that trip. Not the monuments, not the food, but the empty space where I was supposed to be when you turned around. Maybe you'll wonder where I went. Maybe you won't. But I'll tell you. Anyway, because this letter is mine to finish. I went somewhere people saw me. Not because I needed applause, not because I demanded love, but because I finally remembered that love, real love, never makes you beg for a seat at the table. Makes room. You didn't make room for me, Tyler, but I've made room for myself. And it is quiet here, and it is good. Love, Grandma. Yes. You won't get this letter, but maybe one day you'll feel it. The first time Julia called after I got home, I didn't answer. Not the second time either. She left 2 voicemails. Both measured, both careful. The first one was clipped, strained. Mom, I don't know what happened, but we were worried. Hope you're okay. Please call when you get this. The second came a day later, softer, but still wrapped in the old tone. The one that made everything sound like my fault. I just want to understand. You left without saying anything. We searched. Tyler was scared. Just talk to me. Scared. He laughed when Greg said I could carry their bags or walk home. Funny how fear only shows up when silence answers back. I didn't call. Waited. And on the 4th morning, there she was, standing on the porch of my new apartment, holding a paper cup of coffee like a peace offering. She knocked once, twice, then stepped back and looked around, unsure if she'd gotten the address right. I opened the door without a word. Her eyes widened just slightly. She looked thinner, tired. Mom, she. I stepped aside. She came in. No hug, no greetings, just a breath held. Too long. She sat at the small table near the window, the one I'd already claimed as mine. Journal, teacup, small vase of wild flowers. She looked around like she was in someone else's house. You moved, she said. I did. Why didn't you tell me? Pause. You didn't ask. That stung. I saw it land. She held the cup between her palms and didn't drink. Tyler was scared, she said again. Sure he was. You just disappeared. No, I said quietly. I walked away. Different. Julia looked down. Her hair, always perfect, was now pulled into a loose bun. A few gray strands peeking through. She didn't speak, so I did. Told me in a dozen small ways that I was a burden, that I was background, that I should be grateful for crumbs of inclusion. I believed it for a long time. She winced but still said nothing. You all forgot I was a person. That's not true, she whispered. It is, It may not have been deliberate, but it was real. She blinked fast. I just wanted us to have time together as a family. You wanted convenience, I said gently. You wanted me there as long as I didn't take up space. Silence. Then I didn't mean to make you feel. Don't finish that sentence. She looked up. Don't make this about how I feel. It about what happened. She closed her mouth, nodded once. I stood, walked to the window, watched a neighbor water her plants. I'm not angry, I said. Not anymore. I wouldn't blame you if you were. I'm disappointed. And I'm done apologizing for existing. She looked down at her coffee still. I came to apologize, she said. Turn. Then do it. Her throat bobbed. Sorry. Not dramatic, not rehearsed, just. And I believed her. Or at least the part of her that had the courage to show up here. But apology isn't a reset button. It's just a beginning. I'm not coming back. I said, I know. I'll be polite, civil. I'll answer when it's important, but I'm not the same mother you left at the border. She nodded, eyes wet now. I don't want you to be, she said. I think maybe you never should have been. That I didn't expect. It didn't feel cruel. Felt like the truth. One she was only now starting to. She left 20 minutes later. No hug, no promises, just one sentence at the door. If you ever want to see me, you don't have to carry anything. He nodded. That was the only start I could accept. After she left, I stood alone in the quiet of my small apartment. Not victorious, not vengeful. I was free. And in that stillness, I whispered aloud. More to myself than anyone. Finally, the days grew quieter and fuller. Not with plans or obligations. Not with people knocking or phones ringing or errands piled high. Just with moments that were mine. I started walking every morning early before the sun climbed too high. The streets in my new neighborhood were lined with old maples and the sidewalks cracked just enough to keep you careful. I liked that. It reminded me that I still had to watch my step, but I was moving. Every day I passed a bakery. Not fancy, not pretentious, just the kind where the smell hits you before you see the sign. I went in once just for a coffee. The woman behind the counter said, "First time." I nodded. "Your face says you've had better weeks." She added, kind but unsparing. Smiled. She gave me a blueberry muffin. "On the house. You look like someone who remembers when these used to cost 50 cents. I laughed. She was right. I joined the library 2 blocks away. No one there. Asked if I was meeting someone. No one glanced over my shoulder at the computer. I sat for hours one afternoon, reading a novel I'd meant to read years ago, but never found the quiet for. I returned the next day and borrowed 3 more. There was a park nearby with benches and ducks and children's laughter echoing off the trees. I never stayed long, just long enough to remind myself that joy still exists without invitation. And then there was Robert. He wrote me a letter, not a text, not an email, a letter. It came 2 weeks after I left the Lakeside Inn. He found my last name through the desk. Clerk said she gave it up reluctantly but with a smile. Said he hoped it wasn't too forward. The envelope was pale blue, the handwriting clean and deliberate. Inside, "Dear Ruth," or Irene if that is indeed your name. "I've been thinking about the silence you mentioned. The good kind. I miss it too. If you ever want to share some Again, there's a bench on the north side of the lake. It's quiet most days. Be there next Sunday at noon. No pressure, no expectations, just air and light and the sound of water. Yours, Robert. I didn't decide right away, but I smiled when I read it. Not the smile you practice, the kind that sneaks up on. The Sunday came. Cloudy, cool. I packed a small bag, water, a cardigan, the book I was halfway through. Took the bus, and when I arrived, I saw him sitting on the bench, not looking at his watch, not scanning the crowd, just waiting. The way people do when they know something will come eventually. I sat beside him. We didn't hug. We didn't talk for a while. Just watched the ducks paddle around the edge of the lake like they had nowhere better to be. Later he handed me a thermos of coffee. I remembered, he said. You don't take sugar. You remembered right, I said. We sat there, two people in the calm of a life after noise. No need to explain who we'd been, only to decide slowly, gently, who we'd be next. When I got home that evening, I set the thermos on my kitchen shelf next to the plate from the market in France, next to a small framed photo, one I finally allowed myself to print of me alone standing near a cathedral wall. I'm not smiling in it, but I look steady. I look like I belong to myself. And that's more than I ever asked for. They say it's never too late to start over, but that's not true. Sometimes it is too late for apologies, for repair, for pretending people didn't show you who they are. But it's never too late to leave. That's the real difference. You can't always go back, but you can walk away. I'm not the woman who left on that trip anymore. He packed too much, smiled too easily, asked permission to take up space. She carried bags that weren't hers. She waited for love in the pauses between insults. She excused everything because it was easier than naming what hurt. That woman, she did her best, and I love her for it. But she's resting now, and I'm here. I've built a life that fits inside a small apartment with quiet mornings and warm bread and windows that let in more sun than sorrow. I've learned how to say no without trembling. I've learned how to leave a room without apologizing for the door closing behind me. I've learned that the people who love you will never force you to prove your usefulness. They'll just love you in silence, in stillness, in the space you take up without shame. Sometimes Julia sends photos of Tyler, of the baby. Yes, he has a baby now. He's round, shaped and curious and beautiful. Julia writes little updates in polite, careful tones. She doesn't ask for anything. She doesn't call. She knows better now. And strangely, that's enough. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation. Just the peace of not being erased anymore. Robert still writes letters. We see each other on Sundays when the weather is fine. He tells me about the birds. I bring him scones from the bakery. We don't talk about the past. There's too much future left to bother. I won't say I don't miss them. There are days when the ache presses up behind my ribs like an old bruise, a smell, a song, a certain type of cloud, and suddenly I'm back in a kitchen holding a baby, hoping it'll all turn out better. But the ache doesn't make me go back. Just reminds me of how far I've come. And if you're reading this quietly, alone maybe, holding your own breath, I want you to hear me. You don't have to stay where you're diminished. You don't have to explain why it hurts. You don't have to carry their bags. You are allowed to walk away. You are allowed to choose peace over performance. You are allowed to take up space even if no one claps for you. Especially then, if this story found you, maybe it's because part of you was waiting for permission. Consider this it. And if it meant something to you, if even one word made you feel seen, then let someone else feel that too. Tag a friend. I know someone else out there is still carrying too much. And she needs to know she's allowed to put it down. The story continues in the next chapter in the next linked video. But first, I need you to subscribe to join the family as we are looking forward to hit our first 10,000 subscribers target, and feel free to share your story in the comments. You matter, your voice does too.